There was a moment where I realized I wasn't breaking down. I was breaking open. And nobody warned me that becoming myself would feel like losing myself first. But that's exactly what happened. Everything that wasn't really me just fell away. And at the time it felt like devastation, but now I can see it was the beginning of my comeback. The moment my life quietly shifted from survival to awakening.
Something in you woke before your eyes did. A trembling you couldn't name, a pull you couldn't resist, a whisper you tried to ignore but it kept returning, 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 returning. Like a prayer whispered through centuries, like a soul remembering a promise it made long before this lifetime, like the rumbling of a tide that has finally decided to come back for its shore. You felt it in the restlessness that wouldn't let you sleep, in the way your old life began shrinking around you like a garment you had outgrown, in the strange, electric silence that wrapped itself around your days, the silence that didn't feel empty but expectant. That wasn't anxiety, that wasn't confusion, that was the first vibration of your comeback awakening. Sufi cosmology teaches that every soul moves in circles, descent, forgetting, wandering, remembering, rising, and when the rise begins, the heart hears it first, long before the mind understands, long before the body catches up. And that's what's happening to you. The heart inside you has recognized a shift the world hasn't seen yet. A return, a reemergence, a remembering of the self you buried just to survive. You are not imagining this. You are not just feeling things. Your inner world is vibrating with a frequency that only appears when a soul is preparing for a comeback, a real one. The kind that rewrites timelines and reshapes destiny. But every true comeback carries you through a passage the mystics call the in-between, the liminal zone, the threshold, the space where the old dissolves and the new has not yet taken form. It is here, in this trembling middle ground, that the soul feels both lost and found at the exact same time. You know this place. You've been walking through it. It's the strange season where your old life feels too small to inhabit. Yet your new life is still a silhouette close enough to sense, too distant to hold. It's the moment the chrysalis seals shut, not out of punishment, but protection. Because what's being reborn in you cannot be rushed, cannot be witnessed too early, cannot be shaped by the hands of the world. In this liminal zone, your routines crumble, your attachments loosen, and the identities you once clung to fall away like dust from a forgotten mirror. You try to go back, but the door no longer recognizes you. You try to move forward, but the path hasn't yet revealed its stones. So you stand in the middle between who you were and who you're becoming. And the stillness feels like both a blessing and a storm. Sufi poets say, the wound is the place where the light enters. But they also say, the emptiness is the place where God rearranges you. And that is what this zone is. A holy emptiness. A sacred dismantling, a divine pause long enough for your soul to catch up to your destiny. This is why everything feels sharper lately, why your heart reacts to dishonesty like a burn, why conversations that once comforted you now feel hollow, why you stand in familiar rooms that suddenly feel foreign. It's not because your world is breaking, it's because your spirit has outgrown its previous dimensions. Transformation always begins with a contraction, a tightening, a discomfort you can't name, not because you're failing, but because you're being reforged. And though this middle place feels unstable, you are not lost. You are being positioned, placed precisely, held quietly in the narrowing that precedes expansion. This liminal zone is not a delay, it is an initiation, an unseen ceremony, a preparation for a life that can no longer be lived with your former strength, your former identity, or your former light. And when you finally step out of this threshold, you will not return as who you were. You will return as who you were always meant to be. And then, almost without warning, the signs begin to appear. Small at first, subtle enough that an old version of you might have dismissed them. But the one who stands in this in-between space now, you feel them, like tremors beneath your skin. A conversation that once soothed you suddenly rings hollow. A room you once fit inside now feels airless. The laughter you used to force no longer rises. Something in you refuses to pretend, refuses to shrink. refuses to pour yourself into containers that can no longer hold you. These are the first signs of the shift. You start noticing that your spirit reacts differently to dishonesty, to low intentions, to anything misaligned with the truth you are growing into. What you once tolerated begins to feel unbearable. What you once chased no longer carries the same glow. What once felt like home now feels like memory. And it's confusing, isn't it? How something you prayed for years ago suddenly doesn't feel like your path anymore. How people you loved begin sounding like a language you no longer speak. How the places you once ran to for comfort now leave you empty. But this is not abandonment. This is ascension. When the soul begins its rise, it sheds resonance the way the moon sheds its shadow. It exposes what cannot follow you. It softens what no longer belongs. It returns you to yourself by removing what pulled you away. Sufi mystics teach that the heart is a compass, and once realignment begins, it refuses to guide you back into your own forgetting. It refuses to let you return to a version of yourself built from fear, apology, or survival. So you start responding to life differently, walking away from what drained you, choosing silence instead of self-betrayal, protecting your peace with a quiet fierceness you didn't know you had. These are not losses, these are confirmations, evidence that the shift inside you is already rewriting the world around you. Every boundary you set is a signal, every truth you speak is a declaration, every no you whisper is a doorway opening somewhere unseen. This is how the universe adjusts when a soul rises. People fall away, patterns dissolve, paths reconfigure, and your own energy becomes sharper, more honest, more luminous, more precise. And for the first time in a long time, you are no longer moving from pressure, but from clarity, not from fear, but from recognition. These are the first signs, the tremors before the transformation, the rearranging before the revelation, and the quiet proof that your comeback has already begun. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, you begin to notice that the world isn't the only thing changing. You are changing, not in dramatic cinematic leaps, but in quiet, sacred increments, the kind only the soul can measure. You start hearing your own voice with new clarity, as if layers of dust have been brushed from your inner compass. You speak less, but your words carry more weight. You move slower, but with greater intention. You find yourself stepping back from chaos you once sprinted toward, and stepping forward into stillness you once feared. This is what becoming someone new truly looks like. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, it's not the overnight transformation the world loves to romanticize. It's a soft revolution happening beneath your ribs, a rearranging of your interior architecture so the truth inside you can finally breathe. You begin choosing differently, not because you're forcing change, but because you can no longer betray the person you're becoming. Your boundaries sharpen not out of anger, but alignment. Your silence deepens, not from withdrawal, but wisdom. Your heart softens, even as your spine straightens. Once, you needed validation. Now, you need authenticity. Once, you needed to be understood. Now, you simply need to be real. Once, you walked into rooms seeking belonging. Now, you carry belonging inside you like a lantern. Sufi masters say, when the soul awakens, the world rearranges itself around your light. And you can feel that rearrangement taking place in the choices you no longer postpone, in the truths you no longer swallow, in the emotional weight you no longer volunteer to carry. People notice. Some drift away because the version of you they knew no longer answers the door. Others are drawn closer, sensing the quiet strength in your presence. But the real transformation is not in how others see you, it's in how you see yourself. You look into the mirror and for the first time in a long time, you recognize the one staring back. Not the version shaped by wounds, expectations, or old stories, but the one shaped by truth, by clarity, by the sacred insistence to stop living small. This is the becoming, the phase where your soul rebuilds you from the inside out, where your spirit reclaims the territory it abandoned to survive, where the light you buried beneath responsibility and fear rises again, steady, luminous, undeniable. You are not becoming someone new because you failed. You are becoming someone new because you are remembering who you really are. And this remembering, this rising, this inner reconstruction is the doorway through which your entire comeback will emerge. And then something unexpected happens before you fully realize how much you've changed. The world around you begins to react. People notice the shift in your presence long before you name it in yourself. They hear it in your voice, steady, quieter, but carrying a gravity that wasn't there before. They see it in your eyes, less frantic seeking, more anchored knowing. They feel it in your energy, a calm strength that no longer bends or bargains for space. Some will be drawn to this new you like moths to a flame, not because you are brighter, but because you are truer. Your authenticity becomes a mirror they didn't know they needed. Your clarity becomes a compass they didn't know they had lost. But not everyone responds with awe. Some feel threatened, though they'll never say it aloud. Your rise forces them to confront their own stagnation. Your boundaries expose where they've benefited from your softness. Your new sense of self unmasks where they once relied on your uncertainty. Without meaning to, your evolution holds up a lantern to every place where others have remained asleep. People who love the old version of you, the agreeable one, the predictable one, the self-sacrificing one, may begin to step back, confused by the unfamiliar strength now living in your body. They'll say you've changed, and for once you won't feel the need to defend it, because this time those words will not feel like an accusation, but a confirmation. A sign that the inner work you've done in silence is now echoing into the visible world. Sufi wisdom teaches that when a soul rises, the universe rearranges its relationships accordingly. Some are elevated to meet you, others fall away to free you. Neither is a loss. Both are a form of guidance. And as this shift becomes undeniable, you stop trying to manage how others perceive your becoming. You stop shrinking to soothe their discomfort. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You no longer bend your light to keep others from squinting. You let it shine not as defiance but as truth. Because now you understand it is not your job to make your growth palatable to those who prefer you small. The people who are meant to walk with you will rise with you. The ones who cannot will fall behind gently, like leaves releasing themselves from a tree that has decided to grow taller. And through it all, you remain steady, not because life has become easier, but because you have become different. Your transformation is no longer just an inner experience. It has begun to ripple outward, rearranging your relationships, your environment, your destiny, one subtle shift at a time. And then something remarkable begins to happen. The pace quickens. The air around your life starts to hum. What once felt delayed now begins arriving in clusters. Insights, opportunities, endings, beginnings, all unfolding with a speed that almost startles you. This is the acceleration phase, the moment the universe stops whispering and starts rearranging your entire timeline at once. It isn't chaos, it's alignment. But alignment often feels like a storm at first. You feel it in the swiftness of your decisions, how easily you release what once required force, how naturally you walk away from what no longer matches your frequency, how instinctively you say yes to things that the old you would have been too afraid to touch. Your energy shifts from scattered to concentrated, from diluted to precise. Where you once spread yourself thin, you now channel yourself like a blade, and the universe responds, quickly, deliberately, almost eerily. You think of someone and they reach out. You close one door and another appears instantly. You speak a truth and watch reality rearrange itself around your words. You set a boundary and feel your entire nervous system expand in relief. Sufi mystics say that once the heart commits, creation begins to move in your favor, with a speed the mind cannot comprehend. Because your path isn't being built, it's being revealed. And revelation always comes fast. This is why life has been accelerating around you, why your days feel charged, why time seems to bend, stretching in some places, collapsing in others, why what once required effort now happens with an ease that feels almost supernatural. Because you are no longer moving against your destiny, you are moving with it. Acceleration is the sign that the inner and outer worlds have begun to mirror each other. Your clarity is being met with clarity. Your truth is being met with truth. Your courage is being met with openings that were invisible to your old level of awareness. And though this phase can feel overwhelming, like too much is shifting too quickly, remember this. You asked for this. You prepared for this. You have been refined for this. Acceleration is not pressure. It is confirmation. It is the universe saying, You're finally ready to receive what was always meant for you. And as everything speeds up, as paths unfold, as revelations multiply, as your life begins to rearrange itself with a precision that feels divine, you'll notice something profound. You are no longer afraid of the pace. You're aligned with it, anchored in it, carried by it, because the person you're becoming was built for the momentum that your old self could never have held. And as everything accelerates around you, something even more extraordinary begins to unfold. Your relationship with fear itself starts to change. The moments that once sent you spiraling now feel like invitations. The uncertainty that used to tighten your chest now arrives as a quiet teacher, sitting beside you, asking you to listen instead of run. Fear doesn't disappear, you simply stop mistaking it for an enemy. It becomes information, not instruction. A signal, not a command. You feel it. That subtle shift inside you. Where you once braced, you now breathe. Where you once contracted, you now expand. Where you once scrambled for control, you now surrender, not in defeat, but in wisdom. Sufi masters teach that fear is merely the shadow of expansion, a sign that the soul is stretching into rooms it has never entered before. And you have been stretching. Quietly, steadily, beautifully. You begin understanding that uncertainty is not chaos. It is possibility in its purest form. It is the blank canvas before destiny paints its next stroke. It is the moment just before revelation, the inhale the universe takes before it speaks. This is mastery, not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear run your life. You move with a different spirit now, not recklessly, but courageously, not impulsively, but intuitively. You trust the subtle tugs, the quiet inner yes, the deep knowing that arrives without explanation. And because you no longer collapse at the first sign of discomfort, life trusts you with more responsibility, more clarity, more truth, more power. Problems that once consumed you now reveal their simplicity. Situations that once drained you now resolve themselves because you no longer feed them your fear. Doors that once felt sealed now open because you approach them with presence instead of panic. And gradually, you realize you are not the fragile version of yourself who once needed everything to be predictable. You are no longer the one who mistook stability for safety and fear for intuition. You are becoming someone who can stand in the fire of uncertainty and feel the warmth instead of the threat. Someone who trusts the unseen as deeply as the seen. Someone who understands that the path only reveals itself to those willing to walk in the dark with steady steps. That is mastery. That is strength. That is the quiet evolution that no one else sees happening inside you, but that changes everything around you. And as your fear loosens its grip, as uncertainty becomes a companion instead of a threat, another transformation takes root. One deeper, quieter, far more profound. You become dangerous. Not loud, dramatic dangerous, not destructive dangerous, but sacred dangerous. The kind that only emerges when a person finally remembers their own power. You become dangerous to every system that relied on your doubt. Dangerous to every dynamic that fed on your insecurity. Dangerous to every pattern that depended on you forgetting your worth. You become dangerous because you can no longer be manipulated by the fears that once controlled you. Dangerous because your silence is no longer submission, it's discernment. Dangerous because your no is no longer wrapped in apology. Dangerous because your yes is now aligned with purpose instead of pressure. Sufi mystics say the most powerful human is the one who has mastered the inner battlefield, the one who no longer wars with themselves. And that is who you are becoming, a person who has nothing left to prove and everything left to embody. Your presence shifts, your energy sharpens, your intuition becomes precise. People feel it even if they cannot name it. They sense the difference in how you hold yourself, how you speak, how you refuse to shrink. You're no longer moved by flattery or shaken by criticism. Your value is no longer a negotiation. You walk into rooms knowing who you are, and that alone unsettles those who once fed on your uncertainty. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. This is sovereignty. This is the quiet power of someone who has returned to themselves after being gone for far too long. You become dangerous because you're no longer seeking permission. Because you're no longer abandoning yourself to be chosen. Because you're no longer performing versions of you to maintain peace that was never real. Your authenticity becomes a force clean, undeniable, unshakable. Your truth becomes a blade not to harm, but to cut through illusion. Your presence becomes a mirror, reflecting what others are afraid to confront within themselves. And the more you stand in this new energy, the more you realize you were never weak. You were never lost. You were never behind. You were simply powerful in a world that taught you to forget your own magnitude. Now that you remember, now that you rise, now that you walk with the clarity of someone who knows exactly who they are, you have become dangerous in the most beautiful, world-changing way. And as your power settles into your bones, quiet, steady, unforced, something even deeper begins to unfold. Your transformation stops being only yours. It begins to spill into the world around you. Without trying, without intending, without performing, you become a catalyst, a living spark that awakens everyone who crosses your path. Not because you preach, not because you persuade, but because the truth inside you has become impossible to ignore. People feel it. They feel the steadiness in your breath. They feel the clarity in your presence. They feel the strange, magnetic permission your authenticity gives them permission to examine their own illusions, their own limits, their own long-forgotten selves. This is the catalyst effect. You walk into rooms differently now, and without saying a word, the atmosphere rearranges. The energy shifts, masks loosen, pretenses crack. Your very existence begins softening falsehood wherever it lives, because your alignment exposes what others have been avoiding in themselves. Some will be inspired, some will be unsettled, some will be drawn to you with a hunger they cannot explain. Some will distance themselves because your presence disrupts the comfort of their denial. But understand this clearly. None of this is personal. It is spiritual. Sufi mystics say that nothing is more disruptive to stagnation than a soul that has remembered its origin. A soul aligned with truth does not need to speak loudly to create change. It simply needs to be. And you, now moving from that deep inner knowing, have become a walking reminder that transformation is possible, that evolution is real, that the human spirit is far more powerful than the world teaches us to believe. You've become a mirror that reflects both the beauty and the dishonesty in others. A flame that warms those ready to grow and burns through the illusions of those who aren't. A presence that recalibrates the emotional landscape of every space you enter. Your courage becomes contagious. Your boundaries become instructional. Your self-respect becomes a map that others quietly study. People begin to feel safe opening up around you, not because you rescue them, but because your wholeness reminds them of their own. People begin speaking their truths in your presence, not because you demand honesty, but because your energy makes dishonesty too heavy to carry. You are not trying to change anyone. You are simply living from the clarity you fought to earn. But change happens anyway. This is the ripple effect of an awakened soul. Your healing echoes outward. Your growth breaks cycles around you. Your authenticity liberates others from their own illusion. You become a catalyst, not through effort, but through embodiment. Not through force, but through presence. Not through perfection, but through truth. And in this new way of being, you begin to understand your comeback was never meant to be a private victory. It was meant to awaken everyone connected to your light. And as your presence becomes a catalyst for the world around you, another truth begins to rise. A truth older than your body, older than your memories, older than your name. You start to feel that what is shifting inside you does not belong only to your lifetime. It is deeper, wider, longer. You are not just healing your story. You are healing the stories that were handed to you. This is the generational shift. The patterns that once moved through your family like unspoken inheritance, the fear, the silence, the self-abandonment, the shrinking, the settling. They reach you and stop, not because you fought harder than those who came before you, but because you finally became conscious of what they could only endure. Sufi mystics say, when one heart awakens, 7 generations shake, and you can feel this shaking now, a subtle trembling behind your ribs, a sense that endings you're walking through don't begin with you, and beginnings you're stepping into won't end with you. Every boundary you set is a boundary your ancestors couldn't. Every truth you speak is a truth they swallowed. Every cycle you break is a prayer they whispered into the dark, hoping someone someday would answer. You are their answered prayer. You are the one who chose not to repeat what was handed down unconsciously. You are the one who turned pain into wisdom. You are the one who translated silence into clarity. You are the one who stepped out of survival and into awakening. And that shift does not ripple through your life alone. It moves forward too, into the lives of those yet to come, into the energy of the spaces you will touch, into the stories that your presence will rewrite long after your voice is quieted. Your healing becomes a lineage. Your courage becomes a template. Your awakening becomes a map for others who will rise because you chose to. And this is why the resistance was so fierce. This is why the old patterns clung so tightly. This is why your darkest nights felt endless. Because what you were fighting was never yours alone. You were breaking chains that began before your birth. You were freeing voices that were never allowed to speak. You were untangling destinies woven long before you knew you were a thread. And now, as the weight lifts, as the air clears, as the future opens, you realize something breathtaking. You are not just becoming someone new, you are becoming someone impossible to ever forget. A turning point, a threshold in your bloodline, a hinge on which history itself will shift. You are the generational dawn, the first light after centuries of enduring, the one who rose not only for yourself, but for everyone who came before and everyone who will come after. This is the magnitude of your comeback. And as the generational weight lifts from your shoulders, as the lineage behind you exhales in relief, something sacred begins to rise from within you, something you haven't felt in a long, long time. Your power, not the loud, performative kind the world applauds, but the quiet, ancient, unshakable power that can only come from remembering who you truly are. It returns first as a whisper, then as a warmth, then as a knowing so deep it feels like it's coming from the marrow of your bones. A strength you once gave away to fear, to pleasing, to survival, to the versions of yourself you created just to endure. You feel those old versions falling away like dead skin, not with violence but with grace, not through force but through revelation. For years you scattered your energy into the hands of those who could not hold it, into battles that weren't yours, into futures you outgrew, into fears that never belonged to you. But now, with clarity burning through every shadow, with your spirit no longer willing to shrink, with your ancestors standing behind you, you begin calling your power back, piece by piece, breath by breath, lifetime by lifetime. Sufi mystics say, when a soul returns to itself, everything it lost returns with it. And you feel this happening now. The confidence you once misplaced, the intuition you once doubted, the fire you once dimmed, the voice you once silenced, just to be loved by people who could not love the full truth of you. It is all coming back, and with it comes a new steadiness, the kind that cannot be bought, the kind that cannot be threatened, the kind that cannot be threatened by the fluctuations of life. Your power is no longer reactive, it is rooted, it is anchored, it is sovereign. You begin making decisions from alignment rather than fear. You begin seeing through illusions with a clarity that borders on prophetic. You begin moving with a presence that whispers, I know who I am now. And the world feels this shift. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. Reality itself begins bending to accommodate the magnitude of your return. Because when you reclaim your power, you do not just change your life, you change the field around you. You become a living reminder that liberation is not given, it is remembered. And in this remembering, you discover something astonishing. You were never powerless. You were simply exhausted from carrying stories that were not yours, fears that were not yours, limitations that were never meant to be yours. Now that they've fallen away, your true force emerges, steady as sunrise, undeniable as truth, gentle as mercy, and fierce as destiny. This is the return. This is the rising. This is the reclamation of everything you abandoned in the process of learning how to survive. You are not merely stepping into your power. You are remembering that it was always yours. And then almost quietly, almost without ceremony, you realize something breathtaking. You're no longer waiting for your comeback. You're living in it. Not the dramatic movie moment you once imagined. Not the sudden burst of clarity you hope would sweep away every shadow. But something far more profound, far more honest, far more aligned with the way real transformation unfolds. Your comeback arrives the way dawn does, softly, inevitably, spilling light into every corner before you even notice the horizon has changed. You sense it in the steadiness of your breath, in the decisiveness of your steps, in the way you now move through the world as someone who trusts themselves again, as someone who has stopped negotiating with their own soul, as someone who has finally come home to their own being. The confusion that once clouded your thoughts has been replaced by an inner clarity that does not shout but hums, a low, constant resonance that guides you without forcing, that leads you without demand. The exhaustion you once carried has transformed into a deeper kind of energy. An energy born not from adrenaline, but from alignment. An energy that doesn't burn out because it doesn't come from self-betrayal. It comes from truth. And the situations that once trapped you, the patterns that once drained you, the cycles that once defined you, you can feel them collapsing behind you like old scaffolding, no longer needed for the person you are now. Sufi mystics teach that when a soul rises, the world must rise with it. And you can see that rise everywhere, in the ease returning to your body, in the insights landing in your mind like rain, in the way pathways are opening that were invisible in your previous level of consciousness. This is the arrival. Not a single moment, but a threshold you have already crossed. Not a future promise, but a present reality. Not a transformation waiting to happen, but one already woven into your breath, your choices, your presence. The present, you are no longer standing at the edge of something new, you are standing inside it. The comeback you've been sensing, the shift that's been building in your chest, the restless energy you couldn't explain, it wasn't anticipation, it was recognition. It was the soul aligning itself with the life it was always meant to live. And now, as you stand in this new beginning, there is only one truth left to understand. You did not stumble into your comeback. You grew into it. You earned it. You became it. Your life is not waiting to start. It has already begun. And now, as you stand inside the very life you once thought you were waiting for, take a moment, breathe. Feel the quiet in your chest. Feel how different it is from the quiet you used to carry. This silence is not emptiness, it is arrival. It is anchoring. It is the peace that comes when the soul finally stops running from itself. Look at you. Not the you the world shaped, not the you your past demanded, but the you your spirit protected through every season of breaking. The you who learned to walk through darkness without losing your light. The you who kept rising even when no one was watching, even when you were tired. Even when you were certain you had nothing left to give. You made it here, not perfectly, but truthfully, not without scars, but with wisdom woven into every one of them. Not unchanged, but unbroken in the ways that matter most. This is the quiet garden at the end of the long corridor, the place the mystics call Baka, the remaining, the state where the false self dissolves and the real self steps forward with effortless clarity. You are standing in that garden now. Nothing around you may look dramatically different, but everything inside you is. Your eyes see more. Your heart holds more. Your spirit trembles less. Your soul stands taller. And the world will begin to rearrange around this new you in ways you cannot yet imagine. So, as you step forward from this moment, walk gently, walk bravely, walk as someone who is no longer negotiating with their own destiny. Trust the signs that appear. Trust the doors that close. Trust the openings that feel too perfect to be coincidence. Trust the knowing that rises from within you unprovoked. Your comeback is not a chapter, it is a new way of existing, a new frequency, a new alignment with the life you were always meant to live. Carry this truth in your chest like a lantern. You are not who you were. You are becoming who you were always meant to be. And if this message found you, if it resonated, if it stirred something ancient and familiar inside you, then you already know what to do next. Like, share, and let others find this reminder in the exact moment their own comeback is ready to begin. Subscribe to continue walking this path with us, to keep rising, remembering, returning. This is a channel where your journey is just beginning.